Hello, this is Photography Gamer, welcome back to the channel. So, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen my documentary on Gears of War. Whether you watched the entire 2-hour video or you watched the little snippets that I've been putting up in December, I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you found it interesting, whether you're new to Gears or you're a veteran. It took a really long time to produce, probably about 6 months all in all, but you know, I think it's a nice way to sort of digest the whole story in a chronological way. So today, in the documentary, obviously I didn't want to put my personal opinions in there too much, there's a little bit of flavour, but I wanted to make another video, this one, where I just talk about the documentary in general, but then go into each Gears of War game, one by one, and just share my thoughts on them, see what you think in the comments, and then talk about Gears of War 6, or Gears Tactics 2, where we're going with it, what comes next. Okay, first, the documentary, well, you know, as you can tell, it was a big piece of work, and, you know, you think about it, there's a lot in there. There's all the games, all the comic books were covered, the novels. I didn't cover the novels in their entireties because, obviously, they're very long, lots of story in there. It would be difficult to make it compelling to watch because it was already 2 hours. It's a long time. My only concern with the documentary really was because, obviously, if you think the timeline of Gears, the Pendulum Wars is all before E-Day, which is what we kind of know from the Gears games. So, you know, my first 17 or 18 minutes of the documentary was my biggest worry. How am I going to keep the Pendulum Wars section interesting? I hope I did it. I do look at it now and think maybe it's a little bit rushed. It could have been paced a bit better, but I don't know. What do you think about that section? In general, I really loved making it. It was just like little bite-sized chunks, and, you know, there were things that I didn't have to do, like the chapter texts were all like replicas of the original Gears of War 1 game. I tried to copy the exact thing the way when you went to a new chapter to sort of make it feel like authentic to the originals. I also made a map of the planet Sarah. Now that was tricky because there isn't any canon map, so to speak, an official map that's the absolute correct version. There are people online who've tried to recreate the map, and I used a couple of sources for that. I put those in the credits of the documentary, and I just sort of made one because it was nice to show the landmass in some respect. Obviously, you know, it's open to interpretation, so don't hate me for if it's not accurate in your eyes, but then again, there is no real accurate map. Again, thanks for watching it. So right, let's have a look at all of the Gears of War games one by one. So we start at the beginning, Gears of War 1. Now, I remember when this game came out, I remember seeing footage of it and thinking, what the hell is that? Because at that time, if I'm not mistaken, there were lots of first-person shooters out, and it was all very much like jumping around like bloody Frogger. Everything was fast and jumpy, and like there wasn't anything like this sort of grounded, big soldiers using cover kind of situation, like almost like gritty NFL type characters who were like Marines. It was like Colonial Marines meets the NFL meets Alien. It was like graphically back in the day, I remember, I mean, it had this really unique style. It had that sort of desaturated, very sort of almost black and white type style of a sort of real derelict world, gritty characters, interesting characters. The enemies were amazing. I loved the chainsaw on the guns were cool. It just did so many things that were just interesting, like the emergent holes and the strategic elements, the cool story. Maybe criticism-wise, like I do remember playing the first game and thinking, like, who is this fucking Ram guy? Because he appears twice, and we didn't really know who he is, what's his story, what's this about, and perhaps I feel like more could have been done to set up a backstory or flashbacks to really flesh it out, as well as like, you start in the prison, but there's like no real context why you're in the prison, and I think some sort of DLC, not DLC, but like a flashback would have been good. I know they did the Ultimate Edition of this, and they did add content. I don't think it was content that added anything of value. I think we would have rather seen some Ram backstory, some Dom backstory, some, maybe backstory to why they could have shown the kind of the fall of Aphira, where Marcus and Hoffman have their beef, and then that leads Marcus to ending up in the slab. But, you know, still a bloody amazing game. I think I gave it 9 out of 10 if I remember correctly. Really, really amazing. Then came Gears of War 2. Now, wow, what a game. It was like the perfect sequel because it took everything that the original game did and it just made everything better. The weapons were better, the enemies were better, the story was better, the arc of the kind of narrative was better. New characters were cool. It unraveled a bit of the mystery. You had amazing moments and missions like the worm mission, the great fight with it Scourge, and the whole Thai storyline, and the Maria stuff. Like the Maria stuff was like amazing because I never expected a game like Gears of War to really hit emotionally. Because you think this game, it's just a bunch of big lads running about smashing up a bunch of aliens with chainsaws, which, who the fuck doesn't like that? And then thrust right in the middle of it, you've got this really powerful moment, and it's just like it completely came from left field, but it was done so well. And I just think the whole game, such a really nice story, so many cool aspects, and for me that was a 10, that game. That was just, I think that is the peak. For me, that's the best one, because it was just such a bloody good game. And then came Gears of War 3. Now that, for me, I would say that's the most action-packed Gears game that you could possibly ever ask for, because it was just chaos, wasn't it? It was chaos. Chaos from first moment to last. Maybe it didn't feel as good as Gears 2, because it felt like a road show. Let's go to as many parts of the map, like as many biome-type scenarios as we can, and just throw the kitchen sink at it, which was great. But, it did kind of feel a bit like a roadshow rather than a kind of cohesive narrative. Saying that, again, new weapons were good, the new enemies were good. Again, they picked out another beautiful, elegant story moment with the kind of whole Dom moment of sacrifice, which was so really nicely done. Great music in that as well. One thing I really enjoyed was Anya, because Anya was this sort of like phantom character she was in it through voice, and she was in some cutscenes, but you never really felt like she was in the game. And then in this one, it was like, bang, she's there. She's part of the squad. You had all of you had Mataki, you had Hoffman, everybody was in it, and it was really a nice ensemble. Great conclusion. The whole Azura section, like the whole boss fight and the lead up to it, that is some of the best stuff I think I can ever remember playing. And obviously all these Gears 1, 2, 3, I think one thing I just haven't mentioned already is the couch co-op, because for me, couch co-op is gaming at its best. Sitting there with one of your mates on the couch, have a drink, have a bit of food, split screen, bang, off you go. Fucking amazing. So we never got Gears of War 4 from Epic, because those 3 games were done by Epic Games. Then we had Gears of War Judgment. Now, some people think Gears of War Judgment wasn't that great. I think it's quite underrated. I think it's a very action-packed montage of crazy sections that can be manipulated in terms of difficulty, because you've got like these moments before the level where you choose, do you want it hard, do you want it easy. They didn't have Horde Mode in Judgment. They added a survival mode, which I thought was crap, to be perfectly honest, but I thought the multiplayer online stuff was better because the characters ran a bit faster and it made it a little bit more engaging. I also enjoyed Paddock and Hendrik, because I think it was interesting to have like a young Onyx guard in Hendrik, and Paddock, who was like a UIR soldier. We'd never really heard from the UIR, so it was nice to see that kind of side of it. It was also interesting to see Baird, a bit of origin story about Baird and how he fucked it up and got demoted, and also it hints at like the corruption of the COG leadership, which I think is kind of prevalent throughout the whole Gears game. But I think Gears of War Judgment is a really good game. Like, it's pure action. It's not so much a kind of strong narrative with compelling story. It's kind of, I would say, it's kind of got a DLC story, but main game action. And if you haven't played that one, I would strongly recommend you do. The Onyx Point one on the beach, fucking love that mission. Then the franchise changed hands. So Epic, if I remember correctly, Epic sold the franchise to Microsoft Studios, and then Microsoft allocated it to the Coalition, who are like an in-house developer. And then we got Gears of War 4 a few years later. Now, Gears 4 for me was, without doubt, one of the biggest disappointments I've ever had as a gamer who loved the franchise, and then I played a new one and just thought, oh, they just didn't get it, did they? I mean, the action was good, don't get me wrong. I think action-wise, yeah, no problem with the action, no problem at all. I just think like the whole first third of the game is dross, because you're introduced to Kate, Del and JD, and this guy Oscar and Reyna, but Oscar and Reyna disappear. They were the most interesting, and then they're gone. And you're left with Kate, Del and JD. And they just felt a bit like naff, the characters. They felt like they were written by someone who couldn't make the cut to write an episode of Friends. It felt like they were trying to make everybody laugh all the time. It got so tedious. And it wasn't funny. It was dull. I also really didn't like the first third, like I said, because essentially you're just fighting a bunch of robots. You know, Gears is not about fighting bloody robots, and I just found that whole opening gambit so tiring. And then when the the swarm came back, the locusts, things like they called the Brumax Swarmax. That's the best you could come up with. It's just, fuck me. I just thought, no. And I also feel like they trashed the original cast because Marcus was in it, but he was like cameo. I felt like they chucked Anya in the bin. Of all the characters, like in the modern age we live in, they love to sort of promote female lead characters, and I have nothing against that. If there was ever a female lead that could have really sort of pushed this game up, would have been like Anya. But they just threw her in the trash in the kind of interlude, so we never really get to see Anya again. And I think that was a massive, massive mistake. Saying that, I do think at the end of the game, like there's the mission where you've got these giant robots. I think that was an improvement, and I think the end left a nice little cliffhanger that I think worked quite well. But overall, I can't remember what I scored it. I gave it something terrible, like 4 or 5, because I just thought it really didn't feel like Gears of War, did it? It felt like a really bad imitation of it, like someone doing an impression of a famous person, and you think, I don't know who the fuck you're trying to impersonate, because it ain't the original one. So yeah, Gears 4, massive, massive disappointment. Then we got Gears 5. Now, Gears 5, I thought the start of Gears 5 was pretty good. It had this really nice, intense action, the settlements being attacked, a bit of nitty-gritty between the group. You know, the settlement massacre was alluded to. I liked the fact that like Del and JD and Kate were having a beef with each other, and like Faz Tutani was coming in as this complete dickhead, but I quite liked it. I quite liked that he was like, he didn't give a shit. So I thought that was interesting. And then I think the game lost its way because it went into sort of these small snow and desert open worlds. And frankly, that is not Gears of War, is it? Let's be honest. Like, what is Gears of War? It's linear, it's narrow, it's gritty combat, tactical positioning, blood and thunder, madness. It's not flying, like driving around on a skiff around an empty snowy map for like 35 minutes looking for a fucking icon, is it? Like, that's like every other shit open world game we've seen in the last 10 years. So for the open world sections really did lose me. Like the action sections I thought were good. I liked the bit when they went to Mount Kadar and Kate sort of had that realization of her own sort of path in the story. I thought that was cool, and I think, you know, Kate's probably the best choice out of the trio of characters that they went with, because I think James, like JD and Del, really, they're like extras in a movie. No one cares. And I do think, you know, at the end of Gears 5, you could see that the coalition, the developers, kind of were admitting that Del and JD were a massive flop as characters, because you do not take two lead characters and throw them under the bus right at the end where Kate's got to decide who lives and who dies. They did that, and, you know, that was not a surprise to me, but it kind of, I don't think either of those characters, whoever you save, it doesn't make a difference, because they're going to die in the prologue of Gears 6. That's, I would bet my house on it, abso-fucking-lutely. And then after Gears 5, what did we... Well, I'm not sure when it came out, but we got Gears Tactics. Now, that's a completely different game. Turn-based, like XCOM, for example. I like turn-based games. If you don't like them, yeah, you know, it's not like Gears fans aren't necessarily going to like it. And, you know, essentially, I would say Gears Tactics was just a vehicle to validate Kate as the lead character, because it basically was Kate's birth origins. It was Gabe Diaz, Reyna getting rescued by Gabe. They do whatever they got to do, and then, you know, hint at romance, and then fast forward X number of years and we're in Gears 5. I liked Gears Tactics. I really enjoyed the fact that you could customise the character's guns with parts, customise the armour visually and in terms of its design. I would love to see that in Gears of War mainline games, because I think that's long overdue. I thought the cutscenes in Tactics were excellent, and I do think Gears Tactics as a series could be really, really good for telling like these little vignette stories about the backstory and the lore of Gears of War, rather than main stories. It could just tell little stories that could flesh the whole thing out, and I think that would work really, really well. I also really enjoyed the fact that you could recruit these kind of permadeath troops like you do in XCOM. Obviously the heroes in this can't die because then the mission fails, but you have recruitable sort of generic characters that you can modify and customize, and you really do get attached to them. And I think that's something we could maybe see implemented into the Gears 6 game, even if it's just one slot on your team that you could have a character that you can kind of create and have them as part of your squad. I think that would be very interesting. Okay, one other thing about Gears that I haven't touched on is Horde Mode. Now, Horde entered the fray in Gears of War 2 with a 20-wave Horde. Now, I thought it was great. Back then, it was just two, or a group of you, against the enemies with the environment, no defences of any sorts. Really enjoyed it in Gears 2. In Gears 3, for me, I think that was the pinnacle. It was a 50-wave Horde. You had like bosses at the end of the 10 waves. You could use the points you'd got from killing enemies to place fortifications like barbed wire, decoys, turrets, etc. And it was just such an absolute blast. And then for me, Horde Mode kind of dropped off the map in 4 and 5 because, one, amazingly, they made it online only. Even if you wanted to play on your own with bots or just solo or local couch co-op. You hear what I said there? Local. Fucking local co-op. No, not online. Local. You're sitting with your friend on the couch playing 2-player Horde Mode. Oh no. No, you can't do that. You've got to buy Xbox Live subscription because oh yeah, the AI gets spawned online. What are you fucking talking about? Coalition, stick it up your ass. That's absolute fucking bullshit, and you know it. You know that's bullshit. So for me, Horde Mode can just take a walk. Gears 3, that's the only Horde Mode I play now. I'm not gonna fucking play online subscription so I can play offline games. What on earth? What on earth is that? Nonsense, I tell you. So they've got to sort that out. If they're gonna do that, alright, okay, just take Horde Mode out of Gears of War, make it a standalone, make it a free-to-play game like COD, Warzone or Fortnite, and it's just like a never-ending game where you just play Horde Mode. That, I don't have a problem with that, but fucking hell. Why release a game with a mode? This even in Gears 5, Escape Mode. You know, the one where you've got to go through Hive Busters. You go into the hive and then you escape. Oh no, can't play that solo. No. They're so full of shit, it fucking makes me sick. Anyway, right, got that out of my system. Right, so let's moving on. Gears of War 6 or Gears 6 or whatever the fuck they're going to call it. Where do I see the future? Well, I think from Gears 5, it's pretty obvious that the Coalition would love to go full open world based on like the 2 open world sections that they introduced in the game to flesh out the narrative. Now, my feelings on this, they're mixed. If they do it like they did in Gears 5, I think it might be very, very dull. On the other hand, if they can make a game world that is, covers the whole planet, for example, so you have all of the old ruins of the old world, plus all the vast empty spaces created by the Serrano Ocean being drained into the Hollow, I think you might be able to make it work. Now, an example of how this could work, like think of Elden Ring. Let's take that as an example. You wouldn't have said Dark Souls would have worked in an Ubisoft type open world. But it did, because they had small areas that were like the old games. Now the same could apply here. You could make cities or regions epic, huge, with lots of points of interest, towns, old bases, classic Gears gameplay in that tight environment. And in between, you could have these vast sort of exploratory moments with your team, using a King Raven, for example, flying over the world. That would be such a cool thing, to free fly over the planet. You see something, you land, you investigate, you find some secrets, some supplies, you run out of fuel, you've got to go to the next area, whatever. A bit like sort of the Ghost Recon Wildlands model in Bolivia or Assassin's Creed Odyssey in the kind of Mediterranean. You can create a vast area that feels like a continent and feels alive and is interesting. It's doable, but if it's done wrong, it's going to be fucking dull. Now, another option for Gears 6, let's say, they could make a prequel trilogy focusing on the Pendulum Wars, because that's an 80-year war. Create the whole planet of Sarah, like I said, make a trilogy of the Pendulum Wars era Sarah, a global conflict, use that map, release 3 games within that map, then, when that's done, you age that map, however, 100 years to Gears 6. And it could be a nice way of appeasing the COG OG fans who like the originals, because the Pendulum Wars is the legacy story, I guess. And then it could drift them into open world, because you could see the world in the trilogy about the Pendulum Wars, and then it would be really interesting to see how that world that you've come familiar with has changed in all that time when you go to Gears 6. I think that would be very fascinating. But storyline wise, well, I think at the end of Gears 5, they did throw JD and Del under the bus. You make a choice, who lives, who dies. Now, I don't think it would really matter who you saved, because I think in the opening act of Gears 6, whoever you saved is probably going to be like your kind of Kate's boyfriend, and then there'll be a moment where some swarm rock up somewhere and they kill that character, and then we go into Gears 6. Now, whether your choice stays or they just have a canon choice, I would imagine they're going to keep JD alive, and then he kind of starts getting involved with Kate, and then they come and kill JD, and one, that pisses Kate off because she's killed her boyfriend, and it pisses off Marcus because it killed the son. So it's like double whammy, Kate and Marcus like on the warpath. Regardless, like who you saved, Del or JD, they will get killed in the beginning, and then there'll be like a big sort of meeting for all of the protagonists. Now at the meeting, I would predict Kate and Marcus will kind of unify in suggesting that they attack the hives to wipe out the swarm bases, because Kate's parents are dead. Marcus, his kid will have died by this point, I imagine. So Marcus will have this kind of surrogate father, and Kate will look up to him as like someone to sort of kind of perhaps guide her through this process of becoming the new leader, maybe. So in this meeting, they'll be like, let's go and fuck the swarm up. And then Hoffman obviously will rock up in his wheelchair and go, excuse me, everybody, don't want to spoil the mood, but I have been doing this sort of unofficial mission with a squad called Scorpio. I don't know why it's called Scorpio. Anyway, we're called the Hive Busters, like Ghostbusters, but we do the hives. And maybe you could team up with them, to kill the hives, because they've been doing it, Sorry, Jin, didn't mean to, do it unofficially. So I reckon Kate joins Scorpio's squad. She becomes like sort of second in command of Scorpio, and that team of 4, Lani, Mac, Keegan, Kate, go and fuck up hives. So they have to explore the vast landscape and find the old facilities where the hives might be, and then, one by one pick them off until they go to, get them down to a minimal amount. Then you could have a second squad like Delta. You could have Marcus coming back into the fray as the leader of Delta Squad, and you could then maybe, this would be a nice idea, cherry pick your team. Imagine that. That would be so nice, because you could pick from Cole, Baird, Paddock, Fars, and any other gear that's available. Or you could borrow from Gears Tactics, have a pool of recruitable gears who could be customized. But if they die, they're gone forever. And I think having 2 squads in a big open world makes sense, because if you think about GTA 5, you had you had the main characters, right? Okay, imagine you've got Delta and Scorpio, 2 different parts of the map, and you're getting bored of doing Scorpio stuff, so it's like, let's switch, and it zooms out, and then satellites to another position on the planet, and it's like, bang, you're back at Delta. I think that could be cool. And you could add lots of secrets and side quests, like, Paddock, for example. He was in love with Sophia Hendricks. She got kidnapped by a rogue group of COG, and there's no real sort of official literature on what happened there. So she could be alive. Paddock could maybe find out where she is, and like in Mass Effect 2, where you've got loyalty missions for all the characters. It could be like that kind of scenario. Every character's got their own kind of bespoke loyalty story that if you want to pursue it, you could, and that could be Paddock's, for example. But I think one thing that would really be crucial for any open world Gears to work would be enough vehicles to get around, because otherwise it's going to be a boring old on-foot chugathon, wouldn't it? You need APCs, you need King Ravens, you need the bikes, you need skiffs. But you've got to think about the world, right? Premium fuel is hard to come by, so you're going to run out of fuel pretty often. So it could end up being a sort of a Days Gone approach. Your vehicle has fuel, but if you run out, you've got to land the King Raven, you've got to park the car. Then you have maybe a small one-man skiff that you can take out if you're in an environment that allows you to use a skiff. If you're in a built-up area, you've got to go out on foot. Go out there, find your fuel, and then get back on your journey. Because think about how many unplanned moments that could really provide. Because I remember Days Gone, that was one of the best parts of Days Gone. It was the unpredictability of, you run out of fuel and it's like, shit, where am I? For me, it's those sort of things that could make an open world Gears of War interesting. But again, if it just does the Gears 5 model, where it's just big open spaces with fuck all in it, I just think it could kill it completely, to be perfectly honest. So if they do it right, yeah, we could be in for something really, really good. What do you think? Should Gears 6 go full open world with a complete recreation of the planet Sarah? You know, old cities, ancient sites, etc. Or would you prefer it that it went back to its roots into a kind of like a Pendulum Wars edition? Put your thoughts in the comments. Okay, we're done for today. Thank you for watching. Also, thank you for watching the documentary. If you haven't seen it, I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a link in the comments. I'll put a link at the end of the video. Please check it out. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts. But for now, this is Photography Gamer signing off. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Cheers.